Alrighty, let's begin. So, hello, and welcome to SI's Media's new webinar series. This is the first of a monthly series where we chat with B2B media associates and executives about noteworthy trends in the industry. For those that don't know me, I'm Jameson Scarcella. I am the Media Division Manager. I'm pleased to welcome our panelists today, Rob Keenan, founder and president of Keenan Media, and Joe Haddock, Chief Digital Officer at Cyber Risk Alliance. Gentlemen, quick introductions. Let's start with Joe.
Hi, I'm Joe Haddock, and I'm the Chief Digital Officer for Cyber Risk Alliance. Um, I have been in this space building digital platforms for B2B media companies for nearly 30 years. I guess before the call, I was just thinking about it feels like it just keeps accelerating the pace at which everything is coming along, the data that we can collect, what we can do with it, the amount of data we can handle and query. Anyway, for me, it's a very exciting space.
Rob, over to you.
Yeah, my name's Rob Keenan. Joe's got me beat by a few years. I've been doing this about 28 years. I've been with companies like CMP Media back in the day, and most recently I was with Adweek. I agree with Joe, and I'll add a little bit to that. It's not only moving faster, it's also becoming more critical what we need to understand and learn about our audience. So not only is it moving faster, but it's becoming more important for us to bring things together. So it's an interesting time in our business. There's a lot of changes going on. I know we're going to talk about that today. So really excited to be here.
Great to have y'all. It's very fun. Yeah. So basically, to the audience, how this will work is we're going to be discussing first-party data as a revenue accelerator, not only in sales, but just in general. So the way it's going to be, it'll be a short Q&A. We have 10 pertinent questions that we're going to answer. We'll do a lot of back and forth and follow-up. And at the end, we'll field some audience questions for the audience. If you have a question, please just type them in the chat, and then I will read them as we get to them. So I'd say without further delay, let's jump right in. So our first question is, why is first-party data such a critical asset for B2B media companies right now, and how do you define that value internally? So whoever wants to start, jump right in.
Let me jump in. I find this to be an incredibly interesting topic in this market. So, today I work as a consultant and I work with a lot of B2B brands, and the concept of first party data, it started, we started our careers with first party data, right? That was our whole life, right? We used to, when we had our print magazines, we always talked about our audience and do audience polls, and it was always about that data, right? We had this great data on our audience. And we kind of got away from it a little bit in the web trend, right? With things like, Google coming on and driving, a lot of traffic to us. And, we've kind of shifted back the other way, right? Google traffic is down and down significantly. Things are changing, how people engage with us, how people get to us. It's really an incredible shift in the market in the last it's more than 24 months, it's more than 48 months probably. But it's an incredible shift, and it has shifted back to, for at least for the B2B folks, where we should be, which is about our audience, about understanding our audience, about understanding things about our audience, about connecting with our audience. I mean, that's our win, right? And I find this topic to be really cool because it's really what we started as. Maybe we lost our way a little bit. I'm not sure about that, but we certainly are back to a place where we were, quite a while ago. So I just think it's a great time to be talking about engagement with audience, because that's how I look at first party data. It's about engagement with audience.
Makes sense. Joe, what do you think?
Well, I'll just pile on to what Rob said. It's my job to think this, but so probably should go without saying, but I think it's our most valuable asset, right? It's directly from the people that we serve. And in a space like cybersecurity, trust and context really matter. Right? So our first party data is what gives us rich signals and behavior and interests and intent. So internally, we treat it like an asset, and it guides our content, powers our campaigns, and ideally, it informs our product decisions.
Makes sense. So just kind of following up on that, when it comes to like the product decisions, you know, I guess how much do you put into like, let's say, you put into like engagement on like a piece of social media or like you would SEO, like that sort of data. Like, would you say one type of data is more valuable than the other in that case?
Uh, hmm. I guess that one of the things that we look at a lot and we talk about a lot is um, what I would call topic affinities, right? So what are the types of topics that people are engaging with? What do they have interest? That is like probably step one for us. I definitely struggle in this area sometimes because I feel like uh, there are areas where we could do better, but we just don't have enough content to support it, right? And I think that's an important thing to look at. And I know that you have some questions that talk about address this later, but um, uh, we need an area where people are engaging, people are interested in, and that's what we try to frame up for our sales.
Makes sense
Uh,
to me.
can
Yeah,
I just add something to that?
of
Because
course.
Joe brought up the great point of affinity. Look, our audience is our intellectual property. So I'll be my techie, guy for a second, and I'll say it's our intellectual property, right? It is. Our content is, our audience is, right? These are the things that make us who we are. But I will say to you that, you know, affinity and our job to build affinity around our brand, having the right data in place on that audience will matter. I really don't care what channel they come through, but understanding who they are is more important today than it was 5 years ago, right? 5 years ago, we would get some information. Maybe we'd do some lead gen campaigns and other stuff. But today, because of the nature of the digital channels and because of the nature of what we need to understand to grow those channels or at least engage in those channels, boy, I need to know who these people are and I need to know what they're doing. So that is our challenge. I mean, to me, it's one of our challenges. We could talk about that after, but that's one of our challenges today.
That makes sense. So it's actually good when you speak of challenges and changes, comes up to the next question because everything's changing, right? So, how has your approach to data strategy evolved in response to things like the decline of the third-party cookie, the tightening of privacy regulations, these types of phenomena? How do you adapt as we know, media is always changing. You always have to adapt, but how do you adapt first-party data around some of the more established things that we've had throughout the business that, certified that value?
All right, well,
Joe, do you
since you
want to
took
take
the last
first? You
one,
want to jump in first?
I'll jump on this one. Yeah. So to your point, it's the third party cookie that's being phased out, not the first party cookie, right? And this actually in B2B works in our favor. I don't even look, cookies are great. They're very convenient for me and they're very helpful in a lot of ways, but I'm not sure with first party data that I actually need a cookie. It's certainly something we've been looking at for a number of years since we just started talking about phasing out the cookie. But what we've done is we've focused on building a direct, trusted relationship with the audience, whether through events, newsletters, gated content, or community engagement, right? Um, so I feel like we've really just doubled down on first party data collection through clear consent based touch points and moving away from relying on retargeting or rented data or third-party sources. And as a result, we have a cleaner, more actionable data set that reflects real user intent and gives us an edge in personalization and campaign performance.
I think that's the right approach, right? When I talk to customers about this, they sit there, there's a lot of customers, oh, my Google traffic's down and my impressions are down and, all this other stuff. And I turn around and say, yeah, but what do we know about our audience? What do we know about how they're engaging with us? What do we know about what they want to read? I mean, and yes, you need to have good analytics around this to do that. You need to have good ways to capture information on the audience. I think those are the two things, though, and maybe I'll go back to those two things I just said. Those are the two things that we need to consider in this, here as well, is that we have to have better mechanisms to capture the information on our audience, right? And then we need better analytics tools to understand what they're doing, right? And I know we're going to talk about some stuff later and all that stuff, but boy, your data strategy changes because it's not just about, in the old days, I remember we do a list poll. Oh, we got 50,000, CIOs that are at Fortune 100 companies. Okay, what are they doing? What are they reading? What are they engaged in? Okay. How am I reaching them? How am I getting them to my events? These are the questions. These are next level questions that in your data strategy you need to ask and you need to be able to answer. And that's the stuff that I talk to a lot of people about these days. And they talk to me. I mean, these are the challenges they say back to me, when they're dealing with this stuff.
So I hear you. Like, do you think you can give me an example of like what, like a, case study almost?
Yeah, I mean, I could tell you that, one of the companies I worked with, we were trying to understand even a simple thing of, okay, how much data could we collect on them in a lead gen process, right? The most basic thing, right? And you want to laugh. You, we said to them, we said, okay, well, let's do an A/B split. We're going to give you Form A, which is a very simple, maybe name, first name, title, company, email, right? And let's do more extended form, right? Because of the relationship we have with the audience, we had more people filling out the extended form. And I think we can't be scared of that, right? So that's a case study of how can we capture the most data we can capture and not be scared to do it, right? Now, I would say go crazy.
We are we are definitely leaning into that. We are literally measuring the seconds that you're on a page, the scroll depth, right? And that's all going into an algorithm about your engagement level. Look, this is happening everywhere you go, right? If you're going on YouTube or Facebook or right, somebody said the other day, and I love this line, it's not social media anymore, it's intent media. So everyone is paying attention to what you are looking at, and the algorithm is feeding you what you want to see.
Yeah, no, it makes sense because it really has changed that way. And it really is becoming so
If,
like based on what you
if,
want to see. Now you like, people are maximizing on that. That's serious
if you're not
monetization right
doing it,
there,
you're not in the game anymore, right?
right?
Right.
Like that's it's just escalated.
And Joe,
Right.
how like scroll depth? How like we started looking at scroll depth at a customer I was at. How's that been for you guys? Like, has it been? I'm sorry to steal your questions, Jameson,
No, it's all
but
good. This
how's
is what this is for.
No, I find it really instructive to understand the scroll depth, right? Because there's so much focus on the top of the page. I have this conviction that people are at a decision point at the bottom of the page. Everybody else is trying to focus at the top of the page and above the fold, and so I'm really intrigued by scroll depth. Sorry, I know that's probably too nerdy for people, but
but it's important, right? And I agree with you on that.
Very cool. So like since we're kind of in this range of everything's changing, like what's some insights or trends that you've gained from first party data that surprised you and maybe your team? Like what have you seen like throughout like the business that you are both in that's like, oh wow, I haven't seen this before. Maybe we should maximize this.
Joe, do you want to jump? Because I have a few, but I'll let you jump first. I jumped last time.
Well, yeah. I have a thing. I have a couple of things that I wanted to say about this, and one um one is that I feel like there's an interesting moment that's happening right now with data and the way we're collecting it, where I want to break away from what I consider um traditional data points like your demographics and firmographic data and really just lean into behavioral data. Look, the roots of to me, the roots of B2B media was always that the content validated. If you're going to an event, then it matters to you. If you're attending a webcast that lasts a half hour or an hour, then it matters to you. People are spending 2 minutes on a page, 3 minutes tops, right? The average on the internet is something like a second and a half, right? So, you know, I think the behavior is the best, is a better signal, and letting the content validate. And I would prefer to move away from these more traditional metrics. It's not that they don't play a role in the reporting and things like that. It's just not where we should be starting with our campaigns. Yeah, so I could go on about
I'm
that. And
I'm
I
sure you
have
can.
And I actually, the one other observation I wanted to make about this is that again, I've been doing it for almost 30 years, and I really feel like one of the more recent things that I have been learning is that um, when talking to people about metrics, it's much easier for them to hear when you talk about success metrics. It's not that we don't get information from the other metrics and they don't help us, but it's just easier for them to hear it. That may not sound like something that leans into the latest trend, which we were talking about, like scroll depth and page views, time on site a page, but I think it's an important thing to think about with data, like what people can hear you say, and if it's too negative, even though it might be instructive, it's really hard for them to hear it. Um, yeah. So sorry. And then the one other thing I wanted to say about data is that I'm often showing people data sets, and I think that I'm telling them the truth. I'm like, ta-da, here's the data. And it doesn't mean anything to them. I have to have an opinion and I have to have a story about the data for it to mean something for them. And I know this isn't latest trends or whatever, but these are things that I guess I've been learning recently, and like it's been a difficult lesson for me because I keep presenting data and thinking, oh, I've shown you the truth, and it just lands like a lead balloon. So anyway, Rob, you
Well,
probably
I
have
know we're
something
going to talk
more
about our team.
recent to talk about.
I know we're going to talk about our teams later, to build on something Joe said, but I want to tell you just a quick story when we talk about case studies. Here's a real life case study that when I was at Agile Communications, which got purchased, 80% of our digital business was generated by leads, right? We were a lead gen company when the day was done. I walked into a customer and we had to, just like Joe said, we had answers. Oh, look at all these people who download your stuff, and they looked at me and said, "Those aren't leads." I go, "What do you mean they're not leads? They download your white paper, they read the stuff." They go, "Those are just referrals." I go, well, that's why I stopped. I go, "What do you mean? Let's go into that." Right? And they wanted much more depth to the data than I was giving, right? And that's the
Yes.
behavioral aspect that Joe was talking about before.
Mhm.
It wasn't just, okay, here's the person. Where are they in their cycle? Where are they in their purchase cycle? Where, Where are they in that marketing funnel, right? Because remember, marketing funnels go down, right? And the cost goes up as you go down, right? As for all of our customers, it goes up as you go down. And one of the interesting pieces, I think, to the behavioral data that Joe is bringing up is that lets us go further down that funnel and make it a little cheaper for our customers. So that now justifies the ROI investment with us, right? Because the ROI investment up here is there's an investment and there's some ROI, but boy, if you can get me data down low in that funnel, right, near to that point, or it doesn't ever get to really a point, it's really um, an important part of what we need to think about, right? As we go through this. And I do agree that behavioral aspect of it. I mean, if you ever read the book The Search, and it's an old book, and it's a book about Google and all this stuff, it talks about how search represented the behavioral trends of users, right? That was its benefit. Well, the same is true about how people engage with our websites and first party data. So having data on the user is important, and I do believe that you fundamentally need to have that. But then taking it to the next level on the behavioral side is even more critical. I just think that that's where we need to go. And that's the challenging part. That's where investment needs to happen.
Makes sense. And yeah, I mean, everyone uses the internet now, but how they use it is, incredibly varied. So, I mean, I get that it's easier to probably figure out how someone views your website versus, why, and figure out how they can like approach them from that angle with that sort of like traction, which makes perfect sense to me, especially with how, I think of it in the way it's like, you had long form video and now you have short form video and everyone's attention span has kind of gotten shorter, so that it's had to adapt to that. So I totally get what you guys are saying with that. So when we move forward with other things when it comes to this behavioral aspect of data, it's like what are some successful revenue generating products you built around first party data? Was that anything from like custom research, some intent-based advertising, personalized content? What are some examples? Whoever wants to start can go ahead.
I'll just jump in real quick with a couple simple examples. I mean, we use data in several places that I've been to actually build things like newsletters. As simple as that is, right? The data will show you, hey, these people are interested in it, and we can connect people. It also shows you an interesting point. We when I was at Edgewell years ago, we had all these people who wanted to write security content, security content, security content. Sorry, Joe, I know we're talking about security content.
Introduce me to them.
Right. Yes, exactly. But what was interesting is that's not what our in that case was retailers. Our retailers didn't want it. They wanted to know about things like, point of sale systems and other revenue, customer data and how they interact with other stuff that was more behavioral. And it was interesting because there was a clear disconnect between what people wanted to spend on and what people actually wanted to behave on. And we had to do a lot of educating on that. So it not only lets you build products, but it lets you better tailor products for your audience, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. That makes a lot of sense. Joe, what about you?
Well, so every dollar at CRA is audience dependent. So first party data isn't just a research tool or it's the engine behind our commercial strategy. I guess the thing that I would focus on, although I usually am working with the media team, I think I didn't check this, but I think we are the largest uh, events company in the cybersecurity space. I think we do over if you count digital, I think we're over 250 events a year. And if you're going to drive and create successful events, you need to have a relationship with your audience, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. Like, they gotta be
I,
interested in what
I,
you're talking about too.
I
Go ahead,
also
Rob.
think data products are a critical growth out of this as well. I saw it's interesting. I was working with a customer and they were tracking something in their market And there are people who were asking for this data, right? They were asking for it and they had it on a spreadsheet, right?
Yeah.
And I'm just like, why do we not provide access to that? Why do we not provide a revenue stream for that? And that's how you can take not only first party data, but take market data. So you can take the intent of first party data, right? And you can take the market data that you collect and you can put them together, right? And
Yep.
they ended up doing it. And they, from what I understand, they have a pretty good business around that right now.
It's
So just
it's
something to
gotten
keep in
so
mind.
easy now too with the data clean room. Boom, you can offer a data segment without building anything.
Absolutely. That's absolutely
Interesting.
right.
Now, I just want to go back to newsletters real quick. So, like the former journalist in me is always wondering how these can be improved more. And when at my old job, we had a newsletter that we really struggled to monetize. So I'm wondering, is there like a more universal approach to like how you can put like first party data to improve these newsletters?
Oh, oh gosh, the, we're on a totally different topic. We could go for a long time on that one. The answers, I think the answer is sure. You can look at your list and look at the type of people on your list. You should be looking at your list and looking at the people on your list and looking at how they're engaging, right? There are challenges with things like, Apple's MPP, which, makes open rates kind of funky and click rates with bots and all this other stuff. You can go through all that stuff. But if you dig through all that stuff, you can get into some real good intent data and what people actually read and why they actually read it. That you got to look deep into it, though. Newsletters are challenging. They're not,
Yeah, that
but
makes
they
sense.
are important. Today, I'd say more than ever, they're important.
Makes sense.
Um,
Yeah, I think what you're saying is really critical, Rob. The bot clicks and the bot opens have become filtering them out has become an art. And we see it escalating almost on a monthly basis. But I agree with you that it is worth putting the filters in place and doing the work. Uh, I, I- yeah.
Makes sense.
I mean,
I can,
what better intent is there to say somebody came to opened my newsletter and they clicked on these three things. They took the action. There's no better intent than that, right?
Yeah,
And there's no better way to see uh, the engagement they have with your brand. Because
email remains our strongest channel.
I agree.
It yeah. I don't know. I feel like for 20 years everyone says it's going to go away, and it hasn't. It
no,
still remains our strongest marketing channel.
It
I
needs to
agree.
evolve still, but it's I agree.
I agree.
Everybody I talk to, all my
It's
customers
because it's
rely on
one
it.
of the few digital channels that are actually a push channel. Uh, everything, right? Everything else is so passive.
That's right.
Thanks. And then just one more question from this subject from this theme, and we'll move on. So just to go back to events. So when it comes to like that intent-based data, can you get that sort of insight even on the ground at like an event? Like, say you have like an event app. Can you get that sort of like intent-based data from like those interactions?
I'm
We
not
are
really an event guy, so I'm going to leave that one to Joe.
We
That's
are
not my
currently
specialty.
not doing that at CRA. Most of our events are smaller, and you need a fair amount of scale to do that. At the last company that I worked at, we did an event called the HIMSS. It was a healthcare, not the anyway, 50,000 people, 45,000 people, and we put a beacon. The show floor was 32 football fields. And we put a beacon like every 3 feet underneath
Jeez.
the
Wow.
rug. And with the mobile app, we could track everything you did at the show, everywhere you went, everything you did. We anonymized everything. We anonymized the booths, we anonymized the users, and then we looked at the behavior data. It was amazing,
Oh,
amazing
sweet.
data.
I love
Good
it.
to know. Actually, very good to know. Did any like serious leads come out of that, Joe?
Yeah, it wasn't. Yeah, campaigns, leads. Yes. Yep.
Very good. All right. So
Because
the
we can
behavioral.
literally, you can, you can literally go to Apple and say, these are the people that went to Microsoft and they didn't come to Apple.
Yeah.
We think you need to do some work here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense. And that's good to know because, we could use that for some of our in our company events too when it comes to, tracking how people, walk around the rooms and whatnot. That's definitely a good thing to know. Okay, we'll move on. Okay. So we talked a little bit about teams earlier, and I guess the point now is team alignment's huge. So how do you demonstrate the rate of investment of data investments to the stakeholders outside of the data and the tech teams, like the ed team, the marketing team, the sales team, your social media team? How do you do that?
Education, 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 training, education.
Makes
Don't
sense.
forget the training part
Okay.
now, right?
Yeah.
Um, here's what I found. At least, look, I spend a lot of time with content teams. I always have. I spend a lot of time with marketing teams. Always have. Um, editorial teams much better today than they were years ago, but still scary at how little they understand their own data.
Mhm.
Right?
Yep.
Very scary. Um, and I will tell you that if we don't continue to push that we are in the world of data, we live in the world of data. Our teams need to understand the data, okay? And not what they think the data is. They need to see and understand what the data is saying. It's exactly what Joe said before. I can't just walk up and say, hey, this is great. I got to walk up and say, hey, this is what we're seeing, and this is why we're seeing it, and this is the impact that this can have, right? Data is critical. I think you also have to have, and I've seen the best teams that I've worked with talk about data on the same level, right? When they talk about data, they're sharing data across the board. Editorial dashboards aren't just for editorial teams anymore. They're
Right.
for marketing teams, they're for sales teams, they're for, everybody on the team. They're dashboards for the brand, not dashboards for a team. And I think I can't stress that enough,
And I may
right?
quote you on that, Rob.
You can quote me on any Joe. You can quote me on anything like that. I like to be famous with a quote. I
Well,
mean, but
we
it's
build
true.
so many dashboards, and there's always a request for another dashboard. And
Right.
that's why on the earlier side, I was talking about the narrative and the opinion. If you're not bringing an opinion about the data and you're not helping them understand it, they just there's just this constant request for another dashboard. Um, w- uh, uh, we happen to use a CDP called Hum, and one of the unique things about our CDP is it actually does have an editorial dashboard. So in the CDPs that I've worked with before, it's been very focused on leveraging the behavior data for running better campaigns and reporting on how campaigns ran. Um, but one of the unique things about this CDP is it does allow us to work with the editorial team so that they can see, and we have united all of our public facing, whether it's a webcast, an event registration, or an email, or but you name it, we have integrated it, and you can have a holistic view of what people are consuming, how they're consuming it, and what content is working. We actually do analysis for content gaps, content opportunities, things like that. Uh,
I also think this is where AI becomes. I'm using the big word now. I'm using the big
yeah,
AI word. Okay.
Is the
Boy, I
AI in
think
the
this
room
is
with
where
us?
AI and machine learning can be a huge help for folks, right? Because if you could create interfaces that take the need for the dashboard away, and you just simply say, hey, I want to know how many people are interested in this topic over the last 6 weeks. That's stupid query, but let's go with it, right? You know, and I'm a salesperson or I'm a marketing person, right? Boy, that's powerful,
Hmm.
right? And at the same time, I want to know how many people have read topic B on my site in the last three. Well, that's powerful for editorial as well. You know, but the thing is what's nice about the AI tools is they take away the scariness of Google Analytics and they make it a prompt. And making it a prompt becomes really cool because
Yep.
it's just a way that it's a natural way people talk to a machine. As scary as we are, we're talking to a
It,
machine right now, right? You know, and that's the way that you know we need to think about that a little bit. So it's taking AI out of a technology and taking AI what I call up the layers to an application you know approach.
Makes sense. Joe, any follow-up?
yeah. Just on the being able to talk to your data, I think it's around the corner for us. We're definitely working on it, and it feels very powerful to be able to talk to your data. Uh, it's a brand new way of interacting. You don't need the data engineer to create a data set for you to look at and ponder.
Makes sense to me. Okay, we're gonna move forward. This is sort of staying in that sort of realm. What sort of strategies have been successful in aligning all of these teams, sales, editorial, marketing, around data collection and usage, excuse me. Like, how do you get the most out of this cross-department collaboration? I'll start with Joe.
We actually we try to bring everyone into the conversation early. We actually make the KPIs part of our budgeting process. So everybody is aligning across the company on their KPIs. And then we have regular check-ins and we're trying to look at where we're succeeding, where we're failing. We create cross-team groups and a framework for trying to prioritize those projects that we call Pathfinder. And then we try to make data a tool and not a burden.
Makes sense. Rob, over to you.
Amen.
Amen. Makes sense.
I don't I don't have anything to add to that. That's exactly what you need to do. The early
Yeah,
part is the big one, I think.
and
And the
I'm sure.
KPIs, I'm a big believer in putting KPIs in people's compensation. I know people don't love me for that one, but
We're
I'm a big
really,
believer in that.
yeah, they do. I don't know if people love it. But our CFO is a big believer in that, and it really pushes through that. Putting it in the budgeting process is really great place to anchor it.
So it's
And
like
then,
almost, sorry, Joe, go ahead.
no, good.
I was gonna say, so it's sort of like going back to Rob's point about like, education, training, education, and doing it, early, sort of like that.
Yeah,
Okay.
yep.
Do it early
Makes
and then add those elements.
makes sense. I guess just to continue with like, I guess this is less of a technical question and more of just a, teamwork question. Is there any like apprehension to across these teams to like embrace the data, or is everyone mostly like, yeah, let's do it. Let's show me what the data is, give me the narrative, and I will, do my best with my team to sort of get that better outcome on the revenue side.
I find that we have a lot of trust issues about data. I'm not really sure where that comes from. Well, I have a hypothesis in that, like, we unite a lot of different systems, and I'm looking for trends and I'm looking for behavior, and I'm not necessarily making sure that, the 3,256 items that happened here are also aligned here. As long as I'm very closely aligned, I'm happy, and I'm going to use that as a trend. And I think it really bothers people when they don't see the exact numbers reflected everywhere, that there might be a little drift between I think I'm happy with this, say even a 10% drift between systems. Maybe that's too casual. I don't know. But but it's amazing to me how much that sparks a distrust for. And maybe the distrust is actually driven by something else. I don't know, but that's what it feels like,
Makes sense. Rob,
sounds
you
like.
yeah, Rob, you experience anything similar, different?
The one phrase I hate hearing said is this group is not accustomed to analytics and therefore not, not loving it, right?
Yeah.
I hate that. Um, Boy, is that 1999 of
Right.
us. Um, we need to trust our data. I do li- the OCD in me or whatever you want to say is going to tell you I like them to match, but I know they won't, and I'm comfortable with that, just like Joe. That being said, we can't be scared of it. Okay.
Hmm.
Now, not everybody's good at data. Okay. That's the other thing we have to become comfortable with, right?
Right.
But we also, if that person's a good person on our team, we have to bring them along, right? We got to show them examples. And, so I'm not saying that the one thing I don't ever want to say is we want to throw out everybody and bring it on. No, no, there's a lot of people I've met on the editorial time who stink at data, but have great understanding of their markets. We got to bring them along, right? That being said, it's got to be top down. The call for data and the importance of data, it's got to start at the C level and it's got to come, translate down. It just has to.
Yeah. No, I agree. Joe, any follow-up?
No, I think Rob summed that up really nicely.
Makes sense. All right, cool. I agree because data is only going to get more important as we're seeing. Like it's only going to get more important. All right, next question. So, in niche B2B markets, how do you balance, depth versus scale, aka quality of data versus quantity of users? I'll kick it to Rob. How do you balance that?
I think it depends on the project that you're doing,
Hmm.
right? If you're doing an event, right, and you're not doing a large scale event, you're doing the smaller events like Joe has talked about, and we used to do at Edgel and others. Like quality was the way to go, right? If I'm doing a big old trade show or I'm doing a more general purpose event like a market trend study, I'm gonna care a lot about quantity. It's I personally always love quality over quantity. I'd rather have less people and more depth, right? But there are times where quantity matters,
Hmm.
and you've got to be able to. So, I just think it depends on the project,
Yeah,
and
that
it
makes
depends
sense.
on the outcome you're looking for.
Makes sense. Joe, what are your thoughts?
Well, I love to say quality over quantity, but I think there is a reality that if you don't have a big enough data set, it's very hard to affect an outcome.
Mhm.
So the difference between 7,000 people and 30,000 people is, for me, a successful program. I need a certain amount of people to normalize the behavior. Right? And if it's too small, it doesn't, I can't predict, I can't affect the outcome with too small a group. So yes, I want to say quality over quantity, but there are certain uh what would you like, there are certain limits where I start getting I don't I I don't know, I guess I just have a general idea that I need a big enough pool to normalize the behavior, if that makes sense.
That does. Now, would you see that sort of like quality versus quantity sort of split? Would you see that across, events versus digital, something like that?
I'm sorry, say that again, I'm sorry.
So like when you're seeing sort of like, like how you said like, I had like, 7,000 or users come versus 37,000 users. Would you see like sort of that differential split of quality versus quantity, like, say like how we talked about like the events data sort of, and then versus like go to the internet page. which may have less data to go off of instead of like the events. Is this making more sense?
Yeah, you're just like there are stronger signals, right? That's what you're
Yeah.
looking for, their engagement level, and that definitely plays a role. So the client or the program, whether it's internal or external, they're going to give me an ICP or a TAL or right, and then I'm going to look at the audience and I'm going to look at the topic and their engagement around that topic, and it's where those numbers intersect to tell me whether I can run a successful program for you or not, right? And this is where again where I feel like we start running into brittleness where they're going to give me a list of titles that need to match. Titles are incredibly hard to match. We use a lot of fuzzy logic and we try and do a lot of different things around that, but in some cases I actually think you, that you think that title is what you want, and it's not, because it's not where the behavior is happening. And when we look at the subject and the topic, and we have the activity, I want to go back to whoever it is asking the program and be able to have a discussion about. I, I think you should reconsider who you want to talk to based on the message that you're sending out. Uh, well, at the last company that I worked at, it was healthcare, and there are only 32, 3,000, say 3,000 CTIOs that matter in the industry. And I would be on call after call with people saying, I need to talk to the CTIO. And we actually had those relationships. I could get them for you as a lead. I can get them to open your emails. I can get them to download your assets, but they won't take your phone call. And they're certainly not a lead to you. They're just not the people making those decisions. And so we had to have a discussion that worked great. It was fantastic with our clients. We had to have a discussion about who's making the decision, because the CTIO is sitting on top of a team that's actually making that decision.
That makes sense. Rob, anything to add?
No, not much to add there. I mean, I think we're all on the same page on that
Yeah.
topic.
Try get me excited on.
That's good. I like the passion. We need that. Very good. All right, so next question. So with that sort of data, how do you integrate it all across this ecosystem? So we talked about events, content platforms, marketing, but how do you make it into this whole like actionable view for the audience, or of your audience, I should say, not for the audience? I'll kick it to Rob.
Okay, so first of all, you got to normalize your data set. That's the first thing. Second thing is you got to figure out how to bring it together. It's not easy. You don't need everything from every system. Let's just start there. Okay, you don't necessarily need everything from every system coming in. Um, I, okay, I have a few different thoughts on this, but the biggest thing for me is to start at the end, right? We often start at the beginning. Oh, we got to bring it all together. Everyone. Oh, we got to bring it together. Why? What questions are we trying to answer? What are my questions? I like to start at the end. Let's talk about what we want to achieve. And then also, if I don't know the question right now, how can I get there? And those are the two things I like to start with. So when I talk about this topic, integrating the systems, there's lots of answers to that. Okay. And every media brand will have their own answer, right? Because every media brand has their own different priorities on that topic. But knowing the questions at the end will drive that. And that's I live and breathe by that topic.
Makes sense. Joe?
Yeah, so I think what Rob is saying is true. You don't need every piece of data. There's a lot of data that we don't bring in because it's not actionable or it's not actually connected to a person. Right? So I'll give you an example. A lot of social media data, we use it. We report on it. It is actually part of our data set, but we don't put it in what we call our CDP, our customer data platform, where we do unify and normal, like, actually, we don't do the normalization there. I think what Rob said is a really important thing. And as we have looked at normalization, we actually normalize at our business we do a harmonization program across the company. All the different groups have to agree, this is how we're going to use this data. This is the nomenclature. This is how, right? And we normalize the data that's going in. We don't ask the CDP to normalize the data, and we only put data in there that is, to Rob's point, actionable, right? Is that data actionable, or is it noise? And I'm not afraid of data. We put a lot of data in our CDP.
Right.
I think that, when you talk about integrating across systems, some of these things are plug and play. It's really easy to integrate them, takes minutes to do, and some of them are much harder. I think nowadays, if there's no API, is you probably shouldn't be working in that system. Um, and
Agreed.
that is where we do, like, any type of custom integration is through APIs.
Makes sense.
Sure.
So in that case, I guess going sort of almost kind of going back to, quality of data versus quality of users. If you say, like in your example, social media, you use it, but it's not like it's not like the overall picture. For a niche market like that, is there a certain type of data they should be looking more closely at if it's like not social media, page clicks, article
Oh,
scrolls, something like
well, all
that?
right. So let's deconstruct social media for a moment.
Yep.
There are a lot of views in social media. Um, I don't put that in my CDP. If you click on a link and it has a UTM, then it's going to go into the CDP, and we're going to know it's social media. We're going to know what the campaign was. We know all the details about it. So when the user, and then we unify our user data, and that all gets from the very first time you come to our website, we start tracking you, right? And we track you anonymously. I actually find anonymous data very, very useful. Even though I don't know your name or your email address, it's very useful to understand that behavior. When you fill out a form or you take that next step with us where I know who you are, we then connect all of that data to your account, right? So we have a history of your behavior, how long, when you actually did convert and become a known user, right? So we have different levels that we're tracking between anonymous, known, engaged, sellable, that type of
That
layering.
makes that makes sense.
Did I answer your
Ro-
question?
Yeah, that does. That gives me an
Oh,
idea of kind of like
so,
how you want to like create the
so
actionable view of your audience, especially if it's not like the biggest audience yet, but that also means that it can grow a lot bigger. Rob, anything to add?
Yeah, I just think there's some uniqueness in systems that may not apply, bringing it all together. But the biggest thing that I really the thing that drives me crazy is, you have, you know, event team asking the question one with these options but the lead gen team asking the same question with different options, and now you can't bring them together nicely, right? I, that shouldn't be anymore. We should be harmonizing our data. We should know, like, if we got to agree. This is when we ask this question. This is how we're gonna ask it,
Right.
right? And I believe that that's important. And it's there's a lot of legacy there, and it's important to take a step back and say, if I had a clean sheet of paper, what would I do again? And then once you have that figured out, then how do you roll that out? We don't look at the clean sheet of paper enough, right?
Yeah.
And I do think that that's important. I'm always the one saying, all right, don't worry how we do it today. What if we were to do it the right way?
Right.
And that's critical in the integration process. But the reality is you have data and you got to figure that out. as Joe said, there's lots of ways to bring things together. I think CDPs are one way. I think there's other ways too, that can help. But I do believe CDPs are critical in that process as well. So
Definitely. I can agree more. All right, move up to the next one. So, looking ahead, where do you see the most exciting opportunities for first party data and revenue generation? Is it real-time personalization, AI modeling, there's the big scary word, predictive content, or maybe something different? Uh, I'll start with Joe.
Well, yeah, so I think Rob already started talking about this with the AI, and
Yeah.
he was talking about talking to your data, but I think that we're going to have real-time content personalization, right? We can actually tweak our body of content to answer your questions. We're currently redoing search on our website, and one of the things that we're talking about is why isn't it a chatbot? Why are we doing search anymore? Right. There's a cost implication, and I'm not ready to jump to it because it could cost me a lot of money trying to answer everyone's question if I put a chatbot on. But I do think that probably behind a registration wall or something like that, that is what we will move to next, right? And I think that it creates value there. And we have the body of content, we have the knowledge, but we can now put it together for you in ways that we had never thought of before, right?
Yeah. Interesting. Rob?
yeah, look, we need new revenue streams, right?
Mhm.
Um, eh, the old revenue streams are either going away, changing, adopting, whatever they are. One of those revenue streams is getting more money from our audience, you know. But to do that, we need value,
Mhm.
right? And to me, that is clearly in the first party data realm, right? If we can get first party data and create experiences. Now, I know that's a crazy little word that means nothing on to some level. It means a lot to others, right? But to create an experiential place, maybe it's a personalized place, maybe it's something else, but to create something that sits behind a gate where we can generate revenue from it, I just see that as the opportunity. If you were to tell me what that is, I don't know yet. I think the tools that still need to come along, but I can tell you, I see that as the biggest failure to the subscription-based systems that we've had today. There's not enough value behind the gate
Yep.
for people to pay.
Yep.
We need to put more value behind the gate for people to pay. Everybody goes, oh, let's go to the New York Times. Well, it's great, but the New York Times had extreme value in its content,
Right.
right? Extreme Wall Street Journal, extreme value in its content. They built that up over a long time. And I'm not saying that all B2B brands don't have that. I'm just saying that our audience doesn't see that because we gave it away for so long.
Right.
And I think
That
we
makes
need to do something about that.
that makes sense to me. I mean, it's definitely starting to become that way because, we noticed in our benchmark report, that banner ads were declining. And the same thing kind of with subscriptions. It had become almost like a tertiary sort of like revenue stream. But data had become so much more, that it became like this is what they're going to emphasize for the next 5, 10 years, let's say. So, if you have like a smaller company, let's say, I'm trying to think of a good like publication without getting too specific, but like let's say not like a New York Times, like an Informa like subsection, would the real time like personalization benefit them more than just having that subscription model?
I think the answer is it depends,
Right.
right? Look, I think that right now I worry less about subscription model and more about engagement on the site,
Hmm.
right? When I want to
Yep.
take the 2 to 3 pages that somebody's staying, the 1 to 2 minutes, and increase that. But to do that, I've got to do more than I'm doing right now. It can't just be about, getting some content out the door. It's
Right.
got to be about an experience. There's got to be something more there.
So
There's got
this
to be
comes
some
back to
personalization.
content strategy, content journey, right? Thinking about strategically about your content and the data exhaust that it's producing, right?
Right. Yeah. And this is why you got to align all the teams because, the content creators, they can drive that engagement. And then the data team can handle the insights from that. So yeah, I agree. It's definitely all about continuing that sort of education, like Rob saying, like what you said, Joe, strategizing the content better, how you post it, where you post it, that sort of thing. So yeah, I agree. Definitely going to have to lean more into the data as we kind of move away from the banner ads, the subscriptions, the paywalls. So good to know. This is very good. All right, this is the last question I have for you, gents. So, what advice would you give to a B2B media company that's looking to make this leap from a content or only base or only like event-led business to just truly data informed?
Why aren't you there yet?
It's a good answer.
I mean, this is 2025. I mean, I know. Look, I'm joking. I'm joking. I'm joking. I'm joking. I'm joking. Not everybody's there yet. I think the first thing is you got to figure out how to
Isn't
bring data
that's
together.
good for us, Rob, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think you got to figure out where to bring data together. I think you start simple. It's crawl, walk, run, right?
That's
The most simple thing is put a darn CDP in place. It's going to help, right? The second thing is figure out how you're going to align this data. And the third thing is to start getting people in tune with it. And but you got to crawl first. You're not going to everybody wants a sprint and data. It won't happen. I had a customer, trust me, they wanted to sprint and they hit a major wall when they sprinted. I advised against it and they did it. And that's okay. We figured it out. But they ended up crawl, walk around and they got a better result from that. So that's my take.
Excellent. Very good. Good advice all around. All right. So just for the sake of time, we're going to jump to audience Q&A. So if anyone has a question in the audience, you can feel free to drop it in the chat. Yeah, just go ahead. Let's see if we get any. Let's see. Give it like 2 minutes. All right. Looks like no questions. Seems like we've answered everyone. All right. So I think that's gonna do it for us here today, gents. That was all the questions I had. Some fantastic answers. I've learned a ton, and I'm hoping the audience has as well. This could well be a topic that, we talk more about at BIMS 2026, which is back in New Orleans, February 2 through 3, 2026, at the Ritz-Carlton in NOLA again. So we hope everyone can make it. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Rob, for joining us today. Thank you for spending a good chunk of time on this. I think everyone's going to learn a lot. And
Thank
hopefully
you,
we all stay
Jason.
in touch. Yeah, of course.
Thanks,
Glad to be
Jameson.
your
We
host.
appreciate it.
Glad
Thanks,
to be
Joe.
here.
Yeah,
Thanks,
thanks,
y'all.
Rob. It
Have
was
a good
fun.
one. Yeah, it was. Have a good one, y'all.